Hey guys, this is Noah with Learn Meta-Analysis, and today I thought it would be just kind of a fun video to go through and see, can a large language model help you interpret meta-analysis results from R? And so I was thinking about this morning because when I was learning R, it was kind of challenging for me to understand what all of the output meant because it was just so different than I was used to seeing in comprehensive meta-analysis or JASP or some of the other programs that exist. So I just thought this would be fun, and I thought we'd go on this little adventure together. We are going to test. We're going to run a meta-analysis using simple meta-analysis. Then we're going to take the results. We're going to drop them into Claude. We're going to drop them into GPT. We are going to test them out probably with Gemini as well, and then we'll run a couple local models, small local models, and see what they have to say about this too. So let's go ahead and get started. This will be fun, to the point. I do want to put this disclaimer on it. Please do not rely 100% on large language models to interpret your results from meta-analysis, okay? You need to put brain power into this. Large language models make mistakes. This is purely just for fun and a learning experience. I am not in any way suggesting that you use the large language model to interpret your results and tell you 100% what it means. You need to have a human in the loop on these things. So anyway, that disclaimer out of the way. Let's have some fun. So I'm going to upload my data set. It's opening on my other screen. I'm going to go ahead and upload that, hit run, boom, done, and we have our results. So now what I'm going to do, is I'm going to highlight these results here, and I'm going to open up a new notepad document. Give me just a second here, and I'm going to drag that onto our screen, and you can see it partially made it on the screen. All right, let's write our prompt for our large language models. I am running a meta-analysis, and I need some help interpreting the results. I am looking at the impact of including a virtual character compared to no virtual character on learning outcomes. By the way, that is not at all what this meta-analysis data set is for. I just typed it up because it was on my mind and easy to understand. So, can you help me interpret the results from R? I used the metaphor package. Here are the results of a random effects meta-analysis. Please explain them to me. Thanks. I like to keep my large language models happy. Okay, then I'm going to copy paste that in. I'm going to use the same prompt in every single one. So I'm going to use ChatLLM Teams because it gives me access to all of the models that I want to test this in on the web in one place, with the exception of Mistral, but we'll jump over to the Mistral site and test that out. So let's ask Claude 3.5 Sonnet first. Boom. See what Claude 3.5 Sonnet has to say about our results. Ooh, it's researching. How fancy. Okay. Let's see what it says. Still giving us results. Oh man, I so wish these things existed when I first started. Okay, overall effect size included 56 studies. Yep, we did have 56 studies, we know, because it says K56. Effect size estimate is 2.7. Yep, we got that right here. Small to medium positive effect. Great. Statistically significant. I guess we should have told it the effect size, but that's okay. So the result is statistically significant. If we look up here, that's also correct. It tells us our confidence interval, also correct. Including a virtual character's positive impact on learning outcomes. Great. Okay. Oh man, this is so helpful. I so wish these things existed when I started. Okay, so tau squared, it's telling us right here, 0.22, yeah, represents the estimated variance of true effects between studies. So yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. If you're just getting started, you may not know this, but you could then just ask ask additional questions like, what is the variance of true effects? What's the difference between true effects and non-true effects? Like, you could ask those questions as follow-up. I bet it would give you at least in the very right direction. So I squared is 0.98. Yeah, we got that. Okay. I'm sorry, I said 0.98, I meant 98. Okay, so I'm going to skip down to the Q test. It says further supports the presence of heterogeneity. Yep, we can know that because p-value is significant. Okay, so practical interpretation. So first, I'm going to interpret this for my own purposes, and then I'm going to see what it says. So when I look at this, I see we have a small positive effect that is statistically significant, telling us that virtual characters are better than no virtual characters for assisting learning. We also know that we have significant heterogeneity because we have a p-value here and a significant p-value there, I should say, and I-squared is 98%. So pretty significant heterogeneity. So let's see what it says. High heterogeneity suggests that it varies. Yes, we just said that. Wide confidence interval. Yep. So that's pretty consistent. And the results are robust enough to conclude that they have a positive impact, but it may vary on specific conditions. That's actually like strikingly good. So, oh, I didn't even ask for recommendations. Let's see what it says. You might want to consider moderator analyses. I definitely would. Examine publication bias. Definitely would. Look for patterns and study characteristics. I definitely would. And last, be cautious about broad generalizations. Wonderful. Okay, so that's really fun. We can see Claude Sonnet 3.5 did a great job helping us here. So now let's jump over and test a different model. And let's test GPT 4o and give it the same prompt and see what it says. Just waiting. All right. Start now with heterogeneity. So I suspect that the vast majority of these are going to be able to tell us like the values accurately because there's really not that much information here. So estimated variance true effect size, wonderful. Tau is square root of tau squared, of course. I squared, proportion to total variability, yep, okay. Okay, so this is saying that's differences between studies, not random chance. Interpretation, substantial heterogeneity in your meta-analysis. I agree. Test for heterogeneity. It is significant, as we know. Yep, not likely due to random sampling. Okay, so now let's look at the model results. As we said, it should be a small positive effect. Including virtual characters, small positive effect. Yeah, wonderful. I'm going to skip standard error and z-value because I don't care right now. P-value. It is significant. It's, well, they say highly significant. I don't like this term highly significant, but that's a whole different rant for a different time. Let's see. Confidence interval is reported correctly. Does not include 0. It is statistically significant. Great. So their interpretation, including a virtual character, statistically significant positive effect on learning outcomes. I agree. The effect size is small to moderate, and the confidence interval indicates that the true effect is likely positive. Wonderful. I will say that it did separate out heterogeneity from the model results, which is okay. You just need to keep that in mind. So here's their overall interpretation, where they're probably going to bring these things together. Small positive effect. Yep. High heterogeneity suggests that it varies across studies. Yep. Great. All right. You may want to explore moderators. Wonderful. Okay. So GPT-4o. GPT-4o and Claude Sonnet 3.5 both did a pretty good job. I really wish these tools existed when I was starting to use R back in the day. It would have been great. Anyway, for those of you just learning it now, it's pretty phenomenal. So now let's try O3 Mini. I need to start a new chat so it doesn't have the memory from that. Let's try O3 Mini and see what it says for our same prompt here. I honestly didn't. I mean, I should have expected that it was going to be able to do this stuff well. I've never tested it before, so I didn't, I'm kind of surprised by how well it's doing, to be honest. So let's try O3 Mini. You did a random effects meta-analysis. Yeah, it's just telling me what I did. Okay, tau squared, between study variance and true effect size. Yep. Gonna skip tau. I squared is the percentage of variability due to heterogeneity rather than chance. Yeah. Yeah, difference among studies, yeah. So we're good there. Q test, not Q squared. I was looking at this H2. The Q statistic is blah, 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 more than expected. P-value test confirms significant heterogeneity across studies. Okay, that's a lot of text to say it's statistically significant. Now we're at our effect size, moderate positive impact, great. Yeah, we have our confidence interval. It reinforces the conclusion that the effect is statistically significant. Okay, so I mean, like, oh, I'm not going to rant about this. Oh, they didn't tell us about the p-value here, so this is interesting. When we're looking, oh, it does say p-value right here with the z-value. Okay, so it does mention that, so I'm not going to go on that little rant I was going to do. Interpretation summary. Okay, so this is quite interesting because this is a different format than before. The other two gave us bullet points, and here we have a nice little paragraph. Indicates that including a virtual character is statistically significant positive effect on learning outcomes with an average effect size of 0.27. However, the extremely high I squared and Q tests show us that there's heterogeneity. Yeah. Might be due to differences in study designs, blah, blah, blah. So we need to do moderation analysis. Yes. Okay. So here's a cool thing that we just learned by doing this. O3 Mini, which is a smaller, faster, presumably cheaper model, although I have not actually looked at the cost, in this case did just as well interpreting these things as Claude Sonnet and GPT-4o. So let's see. Man, this is going to be... Oh, interesting. I did not realize that Gemini 2.0 Pro was out. So I want to try that now. This must be very recent. Let's go ahead and plug this in. I'm very confident that Gemini 2.0 Pro is going to be able to do this. And I say that because I've been very impressed with 1.5 Flash and 1.5 Pro. So let's see what this says real quick. Let's see. Random effects with... Oh, okay. So here's an interesting thing, okay? Here, this one actually picked up on the fact that we used REML, restricted maximum likelihood estimation. None of the other ones that we've looked at so far, at least that I noticed, mentioned it, although it may have been buried in the explanation for tau squared. So when we're looking at heterogeneity now, it does tell us about tau squared, estimated variance true effect size, great, I squared, percentage tells us the total observed variation is due to true heterogeneity. Yeah, okay, moving on. The test for heterogeneity, yes, blah, blah, blah. It's breaking this down into lots of little steps. So it gives us the p-value, and in this case, it's saying extremely small. I don't like quantifying this. I just like saying less than 0.05, but we're going to move on anyway. In this case, we reject the null hypothesis. Yeah. So getting to the model result, we have our overall effect size of this, and it says random effects model. Okay, this is still just interpretation. I misread and thought this was our summary, but it's not. It's just our interpretation. It's just our summary. So, okay, so now we're at our model results, and we can see our estimate is 0.27. This is our average effect size, and it was a random effects, just a little more information than we need, but that's okay. P-value, it's significant. Yep, so we can move on. We have our confidence interval, blah, blah, blah. Summary interpretation. Okay, significant positive effect. Virtual character in learning environments, statistically positive effect on learning outcomes. Okay, great. And then it tells us that information. But it says we have high heterogeneity, which we know. And it gives us the information for that, so that's great. Now, I do like that it highlights this as important considerations and next steps. We may need to do moderator analyses. It tells us a little bit about that. It's always good to check for publication bias. We should do that. Practically significant. Okay, this is a new thing, okay? This is new compared to some of the other ones. At least I didn't see this when we were skimming the other results. Does 0.27 actually tangibly mean something valuable for your field or not? It's encouraging you to think about this because it's a small effect size. And lastly, think about the quality of studies. I do like that they include this study quality issue in there because that's something that we should be considering. Like if you look at the newest Prisma standards, which I think are from like 2020-ish, then they don't actually talk about quality with the word quality, but they do use the terms, if I remember correctly, something to the effect of confidence in the effect size or something like that for each study. And so I consider that in my brain a quality issue, and we should think about this. So Gemini 2.5 Pro worked great. So you can see all these leading models are doing really, really well. But now what I want to do is I want to take a step back from these leading models since they are doing a very good job. I guess first I should summarize what my thoughts are. My thoughts are, if I was learning meta-analysis and I was really struggling to interpret R output, I would definitely drop it into a large language model to help point me in the right direction. I would 100% double check every interpretation it's giving me to make sure that it's actually accurate and what those things mean. But compared to where I was when I started, when large language models didn't exist, this makes it 1,000 times easier to get a jump start on understanding these results. So I have very strong confidence in being able to say, if you are just learning these things for the first time, drop it into a large language model and ask it for help, and then verify what it tells you is actually accurate, because it can at least point you in the right direction, instead of like when I was starting, I would have had to be like, I don't know what this means, and then going back to our documentation like from the beginning, but not really knowing where to start, and it was complicated. So I think this gives you a great jump start on at least knowing where to begin researching what these things mean. So I'm going to open up Docker, and we are going to run Open WebUI, and we are going to test out how the local large language models on my computer can interpret these results. So we're just giving Docker a second here to get Open WebUI running relatively well, and then I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Okay. So it came up with Llama 3.1. That's my default right now. I think this is the 8 billion parameter model, if I remember correctly. Let's drop in that same thing and see what it says. It's thinking. Okay, let's break it down. So I think I'm running a RTX 40, nope, might be a 4070. I don't know what graphics card I have. I usually know what graphics card I have. I'm gonna check real quick. Let's see, what graphics card do I have? I have RTX 4060 is what I have, and it has 8 gigabytes of dedicated VRAM. So if you're wondering about speed of these different models, that's what you can keep in mind. So let's see what the Llama 3.1 said about our results. Tau and tau squared, what are they? Total amount of heterogeneity from true effect size. Great. This is the flag I'm always looking for when I look for interpretations of tau squared. Is it a true effect size? Oh, interesting. I have never seen this button before. What does this do? Cool. Okay. So that's a neat thing I didn't know existed. So if you didn't catch, oh wow, this gives us great information. Okay, so if you didn't catch what I did there, I highlighted something and it came up with this option to ask about it or explain it in detail. And I clicked on explain and it actually gave us an explanation of this area of the results. That's really cool and really helpful. And I wish I knew that existed earlier. Okay, I'm going to move on so I don't dwell on how cool that is. All right, so we're going to move on. We talked about tau squared, and now we are at I squared. Estimates the proportion of total variability, yes. Indicates substantial heterogeneity, yes, we knew that. Or I should say we can confirm this because 98% indicating very high heterogeneity, yes. Now we are going to move down to the test for heterogeneity. We can see the Q value, test whether true effects are homogeneous across studies, and the associated P value indicates strong evidence against homogeneity, which is a different way of saying there's significant heterogeneity. Now I'm just going to scroll up here and just confirm this is correct. Yes, okay. Model results. Okay, so now we're going to look at the actual result itself, the estimate. This is the overall positive effect size in learning outcomes. Positive indicates the beneficial effect of including a virtual character. Great, so we can see we have a small positive effect, although it didn't actually quantify it as small, right? So we don't see this saying this is a small effect. It's just saying that there is a significant overall effect that's positive. We can move down here. We can see that the p-value, there's strong evidence against the null hypothesis, so it is statistically significant, and the lower and upper bounds of the confidence interval for the effect size. So overall, your results suggest that a virtual character in learning environments leads to significant positive effect on learning outcomes, but the high heterogeneity between studies is likely due to differences in design, population, or context. In other words, we need moderator analyses. So what is my take on Llama 3.1? I actually really like this output. I'm looking at this. I actually kind of prefer this output to some of the others. And the reason I prefer it might be the opposite of why you wouldn't prefer it. So I prefer it because it gives us a very bare bones explanation of what each one of these things are, and it leaves you the opportunity to research them if you don't know. As compared to some of the other models that give you much more robust wording and everything, I feel like if you're just learning these things for the first time, that may give you a false sense of security that you understand a concept because you read a 1 or 2 sentence summary, rather than these are a little bit more high level. But that said, this did interpret this accurately and it gave us great information. I'm very, very happy with Llama 3.1, 8 billion parameters. Let's check out a different one. I love Mistral models, and we haven't done a Mistral. We haven't run this through Mistral yet. So I have Mistral Small on here. This is going to take longer to generate, so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter and wait for the result. So this particular Mistral Small model, I think, is 22 or 24 billion parameters. I don't remember which one it is. It is their latest model. It was just released maybe within the last 2 weeks. It's Mistral Small 3. You can see it's taking a while to generate, and the reason is because this is a very big model for my totally normal person graphics card, in the sense of my graphics card, I did not purchase it for use specifically with large language models. I purchased it primarily to be able to do video editing and things like that, play some video games, but without it being like a super top tier card. So to be honest with you, as you guys know, if you watch the channel, I really like Mistral models. I'm actually pretty happy with the speed that this is running at. And this is not the quantized model running like the Q2 quant or anything like that. This is the full 22 billion parameters. So when I do use this model locally on my computer, I usually use it for things like this, where I can just kind of set it and forget it, because WebUI will make a little ding sound when the results are back. But yeah, so we'll just let this run for a minute. I feel like it's at least for me, it's always helpful to see the speed at which these local models run on people's computers with different levels of hardware. So with that in mind, I think what I'm going to do is open up the task manager here, and I'm going to show you guys what's actually happening as this is running. So you can see my CPU, I have an i5-13600K, and that's running at 43%. Memory, I got 32 gigs of RAM, and we are running at 24 right now. And when we look at GPU, you can see my GPU space is pretty much filled up. I don't think I've ever actually seen this run at like the full 8 gigabytes of VRAM. It usually runs right about 6.6, but this is basically as fast as my GPU I think is going to be able to run. And so I'm going to go ahead and close this. You can see it's still generating results in the background, but that's okay. Some of you may be wondering, hey, since WebUI will let you run multiple, like the same prompt through multiple models, why didn't you just run it side by side? And the reason I didn't do that is because I find it a little bit more challenging to actually compare the results when they are completely side by side. But at the same time, maybe that would have been easier to compare here. But really, we're looking at explanations here. So I think in hindsight, I think this is okay. I think either way it could have worked. All right, so we're almost done. I'm assuming we're almost done because it's at model results and going through the confidence interval. I think after this, it's just going to tell us how well, like the overall interpretation. That would be my guess based upon what the other models have done. So we'll just let this generate here for another minute or two, and then it will be done. All right, significance codes. What a boring thing to tell us. I mean, I understand why it's telling us that, but at the same time, when it runs slowly on my computer, it's like, I don't want you to print out 2 extra lines about significance codes. All right, so it's going through the interpretation now, so it should be just about done. All right, so we got, I can't read this while it's generating. We'll give it another minute here. Oh, next steps, okay. So that's something that the Llama model didn't give us. It didn't give us the next steps, but those leading models on the web did give us next steps, so that's interesting. All right. All right, great. And for those of you who are like me and total nerds and just want to know some of the statistics, there they are on the screen. Feel free to pause it and you can go look at those and totally nerd out about how well this model runs on a 8 gigabyte VRAM chip. Okay, so let's look at our results. Number of studies, 56. I love that they tell us this with this model. I mean, some of the models did, some didn't. I like that. Estimator for tau squared. I like that it points out that it's REML. Now let's move to heterogeneity statistics. Tau squared, we have our value here. What is it? It's the variance between true effects. Wonderful. I'm going to skip down to I squared. Proportion to total variability due to heterogeneity rather than chance. Great. How about the test for heterogeneity? We can see test and null that all share common effect size. Great. Strong evidence against this, confirming significant heterogeneity among studies. Okay. Moving down to our results. This is the pooled effect size from the random effects model. Virtual character, positive impact on learning outcomes. Great. So then we're moving down to p-value. Suggests that the observed effect size is statistically significant. Yep. Confidence interval further supports significance of the effect. All right, let's go to the interpretation. The meta-analysis suggests that including a virtual character has statistically significant positive impact on learning outcomes. However, there is substantial heterogeneity in the analysis, indicating that true effect size may be considerably different across different context study designs. Beautiful. I love this. I love it because it's direct and to the point. That said, if you are actually reporting this in your paper, you would need to include a bunch of other statistics compared to what's right here. So like I said, these things are great for getting you started. They are not something you should copy-paste. Okay, I'll say it again. Do not just copy paste the results from your large language model. They are great places to get started and helping you understand things, and then you can go do further research and validation on your own to make sure what it said is true. So next steps, explore potential moderators or conduct subgroup analysis. So interestingly here, subgroup analysis and moderator analysis are generally the same thing in pretty much every meta-analysis that I've looked at, but that's okay. All right. let's see what other models that people might be interested in. Let's run a super tiny baby model. I shouldn't call it a super tiny baby model, but I'm going to. Llama 3.2, 1 billion parameters, okay? This can run on pretty much any computer, I think. And I promise you, I'm not just gonna run this through 9,000 different local models. This is going to be the last local model I do, because then we will have done this tiny one, I would say like medium-sized one at 8 billion parameters, and then the 22 billion parameter one, which is the largest I think like a normal person would probably be able to run on their computer. All right. Super fast results, right? So let's see what we say. And I do find that with these really small models, we need to look carefully. So first, let's break it down. Sorry, I was skimming through these things. Let's talk about the Q-test first. This indicates significant heterogeneity among studies. Great. Yes, that is true. Now, model results. Random effects, 0.27. Great. Z-value is 0.01, confirming significant. Interesting. Okay, so this is not necessarily correct, right? This is why I'm actually really glad it had something wrong. Or is this still... Hold on, let me test this here. Estimate. 0.27. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't tell you something wrong. Okay, so this model has made a mistake. I want to point out where. So we have heterogeneity test, and this is correct. It's telling us our I-squared value here in our prompt of 304, which we also see here, is significant. So that does tell us that there's heterogeneity among studies. But then where we see some mistakes is when we go to model results, okay? So down here, model result, we have the correct effect size. We have the correct standard error, but where it gets wrong is down here with the z-value. So it says the z-value is 3.6, that is correct, corresponding to a p-value of 0.0001. That is correct. Oh, is it correct? That's actually incorrect, the way it labeled this, because this says p-value minus 0.001. The p-value is actually 0.0002. So that's an error. And then the second piece that's an error is it says confirming significant heterogeneity found in the previous step. That is blatantly false. Okay, so let me say that again. That is not true. This is wrong. So these results would tell us that the overall effect size of 0.27 is statistically significant. But this model is thinking that this z-value and p-value corresponds to heterogeneity, which it does not. So this is a major error, and this would lead you to be 100% wrong in your interpretation, and you'd just be wrong, and that's bad. I'm going to move on. Okay, let's see what it says for interpretation of the results. Inclusion of virtual characters significantly increases learning outcomes. Okay. The estimated difference between coefficients is substantial. I don't know what it's saying is substantial, because 0.27 is generally seen, I guess we didn't specify an effect size, so this is probably part of the problem here. This was actually standardized mean difference, but we didn't tell it that. So this could be right or it could be wrong depending upon your effect size. In this case, it's wrong, because 0.27 would not be considered a substantial effect size. It would be considered a small to moderate effect size. But this part is correct, suggesting that students who use virtual characters perform better than those who do not. The heterogeneity test indicates that it is significantly heterogeneous. So that part is correct. So what we're seeing is a mixture of right and wrong interpretations from this model. So let's see what it says for interpretation and context. When interpreting these results, consider the following: 56. Oh, this is bad. This is very, very wrong. Okay, this study has 56 participants and 5 studies. No, it does not. That could not be more wrong. This result has 56 studies, and nothing in here speaks to participants. So that's just a hallucination. The number 5 doesn't even show up for k equals 5. The random effects model assumes individual studies have their own variability. Okay, that's fine, or fine enough, I should say. The results indicate improve, but the effect size is relatively large. Again, false. Incorrect interpretation. Double incorrect interpretation, because they're assuming the effect size is Cohen's d, and which would be 0.26 would be a small effect, and so they're saying this is a large effect. This is wrong. And I know I'm saying there. In this case, I'm attributing a large language model as a person when I say they, so I should say it. The large language model is wrong. Next we move on. Significant heterogeneity. Yeah, there actually was. I'm not even going to bother reading this, because this thing has enough errors where it's not worth continuing to read. So this was an accidental victory for us in the sense of we have now tested this exact same prompt with meta-analysis results in, I believe we did 6 different large language models. We used Claude 3.5 Sonnet, we used GPT-4o, we used GPT-03 Mini, we used Gemini 2.0 Pro, we used Llama 3.18 billion, we used Mistral Small 3, which is 22 billion, and we used Llama 3.21 billion. I realize that's actually 7 large language models. So in this case, we found that all of them except this 1 billion parameter model did an acceptable job. And so I think that is a really big win. Let me tell you why I think that is a really big win. Earlier in the video, I have mentioned multiple times that I would not rely on what your large language model tells you as the end-all be-all result. Instead, if you're just getting started with these things, I think this is a great point to start reading, okay? So like, let's say you're only able to run this 1 billion parameter model on your computer and you decided you want to do this instead of using one of the larger online models. Well, this is wrong, right? We talked about how this is wrong. Some of this is just blatantly false, like the 5 studies. We don't have 5 studies, we have 56 studies. So as you're reading through this, you need to know enough to know that that's wrong, right? But if you compare between what this says and the results, you can, hopefully you're paying enough attention, you're gonna be able to see that this doesn't align. And as you start researching these things in more in depth of what this might mean for your analysis, hopefully you're able to actually identify like, oh, all the books I'm reading say it means this, and the large language model says this. So which do I believe? Hopefully you're gonna believe your statistics books, right? But the point I wanna make here, so to help avoid me rambling for the next 45 minutes on the same thing, large language models are wonderful for getting started with interpreting results, particularly if you have very limited experience. They can help you understand some of these key terms in really important ways. So like, what's the difference between tau and tau squared? What's the difference between I squared and tau squared? What's the difference between the Q-test for heterogeneity and I squared and tau squared, and how are they related to one another? You can get great breakdowns for these things from most of these models that we've tested, and it can give you a really great starting point, okay? But my personal feeling is that should never be your ending point. It should always be your starting point. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here so I don't continue ranting around about this. I hope you guys have found this interesting. If you do find this interesting, please leave some comments down below. I'd love to run these same sort of tests with like creating meta-analysis code, interpreting meta-analysis results, interpreting moderator analysis results across these different LLMs and just see what happens and what kind of results they give us. And like I said, I had not really tested any of these things before in any sort of systematic way. This was mostly, I woke up this morning and I was like, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's do this. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe other people will find this interesting too, because they have the same question. So if this was interesting to you or helpful to you, or even if it wasn't very interesting to you, please leave some comments down in the comments area of the YouTube video. It'd be really helpful. And if you like this type of content or you want to learn more about systematic review and meta-analysis, please like and subscribe to help support the channel. Thank you guys, and I hope you have a great weekend.